Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Haltman, the host of the Do You Ever Wonder podcast, and I thank you for tuning in. Today, we have a little bit of a somber episode. Today, we're going to be talking about anti-Semitism, particularly in our schools. And before I introduce our fantastic guest, I just want to go over a couple of facts. So, in university and K to 12, anti-Semitism, they've become a hotbed, whether it's student boycotts, verbal abuse, intimidation. Normalization of hate speech, and I talk to people about this all the time. It used to be that anti-Semitism was under the surface. Now it's not under the surface, and not only is it not under the surface, but it's accepted speech in a great deal of society. If you used certain words to allude to other types of people, you would be banned, you would be doxxed, you would be persona non grata in most of the world, but no longer with anti-Semitism. That seems to have been accepted speech. Conspiracy theories and scapegoating, that's an old story, and now it's a current story. And finally, the vandalism, the swastikas, the actual going into people's stores owned by Jews. And, that's today, but that's also 1931. So what people seem to forget is that if you can't remember history, you're destined to repeat it. And, for anyone who's paying attention, and I know my guest today is paying close attention, history is coming close to repeating itself, where it's open season on Jewish people. People are hiding their Jewish stars. They're wearing baseball hats instead of yarmulkes, and we're on a slippery slope. And I saw my guest today on Fox News. He's appeared on many other venues because the story he's got is one that needs to be told and that people need to understand, particularly if you're Jewish and you kind of don't see that there's any issues. You're going along your merry way. You're doing what you need to do. You're going to work. You're going to restaurants. Everything's great. Life is good. That's what they thought in the 30s as well. So, yeah, I welcome today's guest, Moshe Sperb. He is the president of the the United Jewish Teachers. Welcome,
Thank you.
Moshe.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'm really appreciative to be here.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. So, tell me a little bit about United Jewish Teachers. How big are you? What type of work are you doing to try and promote the story, but more importantly, promote a solution?
Sure. So just to start off, the United Jewish Teachers was founded in the September of 2024 with the purpose of being a grassroots advocacy group to help support New York City educators. Ironically enough, or I shouldn't say ironically, what I didn't expect was that I've actually been contacted by teachers on Long Island, in New Jersey, in different states on the eastern border, and I'm trying to figure out how ways to support them as well. And the purpose is not just to expose anti-Semitism, which honestly was something that I wish I didn't have to do, but it's more dealing with things on the level of in a building, supporting religious teachers with their religious observance, being able to take off of work and celebrate holidays without being punished, without being told no from a request to have such a day, even though New York City has rules to support them. Whether it's figuring out plans to help support teachers who need to leave work early on a Friday afternoon to get home in time for Sabbath. So there are a lot of different things that we do in terms of supporting Jewish members. Sometimes it's helping them. We have talented people who've helped people with payroll issues, other things, just to give support that maybe the union at times is not super helpful. Maybe at times DOE is not super helpful. And our goal was kind of to do that. But on top of that was the advocacy in preventing and stopping anti-Semitism, which honestly I thought was getting better. And since Mamdani has taken office, has only got worse.
Well, that was a given, and during the campaign and the election, it was striking how I think a lot of Jewish people backed him. I mean, he's got a great smile. He's incredibly charismatic, and that reminds me of someone else. Not the smile part, but
Yeah.
you know, you can't be a lamb led to the slaughter. You have to understand, anecdotal evidence is one thing. And when it's in front of your face that there are issues, I think you have to stand up and take notice. So now, do you think the anti Semitic movement is somehow organized by powers beyond just, people who hate? Who have had an undercurrent of hate, but now they hate above the board, above the surface. But I mean, it seems to me, and you can probably talk to it better than I can. It seems more organized.
I completely agree with you. So a friend of mine, Karen Feldman, who runs a group called the New York City Public Schools Alliance, she's actually no longer an educator, but she's an advocate as well. And in her I'm sorry, getting some feedback. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Okay. So she's an advocate and does advocacy against anti-Semitism. So she submitted a report, I believe it was last year, beginning of last year in 2025, either 24 or 25. I can't recall at this point. Called it NCRI, basically showing you how there have been foreign influences, not just influencing universities, but actually influencing K through 12 as well. So and in New York City, so you have things like Qatar sending resources in, and so what I want to say to that is that report was very, very, very damning to the whole issue. But that also called out the union. There's a faction of the union in New York City called MORE, the Movement of Rank and File Educators. And the problem with that group is that they are essentially a wing of the DSA. The Democratic Socialists of America are a problem. They're not just politically, in
Agree.
terms of we have Mamdani El Sayed now in Michigan being the primary winner for the Democrats going against Mike Rogers up for Senate. We have, in New York, in terms of Congress, Darlisa Xavier. We have someone like Claire Valdez. We have Brad Lander, who's Jewish, who's kind of DSA light. So we have a lot of people. And by the way, El Sayed, I'll probably get criticized. He's not officially DSA. He's DSA light as well. But the reality is that these people are influenced by the DSA. The DSA are a foreign influence political organization that, by the way, is allowed to not only use New York City resources, like showing up to a Mamdani event on transportation, but there's also called Link New York City, which is these billboards, these electronic billboards that are all over New York City, on the streets of New York City, and DSA got to use it and promote themselves as well. So this is an organization that has been basically given free reign in New York City from the mayor's office, but more than that, they are also embedded into the teachers' union. And so these people are indoctrinating and influencing the next generation of students. Do I think it's organized? Well, you tell me this. On October 8th, there was a campaign right away, post October 7th, October 8th, 2023, where Darlisa Xavier showed up. I know this is not education related, it's more political, but showed up on October 8th to protest Israel. Does that make any sense? That 1,200 people died the day before, 250 people taken as hostages. And these people are showing up to protest. That is organized.
Well, absolutely. And when you look at the hangers-on or the actual leader, Hassan Piker, you look at Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and yeah, I mean the DSA is a dangerous organization from a economic, political, and for Jews. They don't seem to like Jews very much, and it's
no, they don't. And that kind of sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and it's hurtful when, the Democrat Party is a big tent party, as they like to say, incessantly say. But, when you have people like Chuck Schumer who will, whatever it takes to get elected. So he will glom on to the DSA if that's what it takes for him to hold his leadership. It's bad.
And by the way, this is why the timing of my report mattered. I wanted to submit this report. This is specific to K through 12 schools in New York City, public schools, but I wanted to release this week for a purpose. And that is because my biggest concern is when Netanyahu comes here in September to the UN General Assembly, I am worried that New York City schools will participate in walkouts, will participate in indoctrination. So I wanted to make sure there were systems in place to protect Jewish students, families, and educators.
Now, can people find your report online?
So I posted it to my social media. I've shared it with internal places, but I do plan to put it on my website. Hopefully in the next couple of days. So this way it's there as well, so
The
that people
United
can actually
Jewish
read through it.
Teachers website.
Yeah, UnitedJewishTeachers.org. It's not up there yet. Honestly, this is not a this is not a paid job. This is all
Oh, yeah.
advocacy
Well,
and
it's not a paid job, but I could call it a mission of passion, but it's
yeah.
you could call it a mission of survival.
Yeah, no, it's true. And by the way, I don't do this alone. There are many people fighting with me and fighting alongside me. It's just a matter of time. But my hope is to get it up there onto the website, hopefully the next couple of days, just so that it's more apparent for people to read.
So, how many members are there of United Jewish Teachers?
We have close to 500 members.
Wow.
If you just go by Instagram, we have 1,500, but that's not; those are just followers. But in terms of people who are in my WhatsApp group, I have a WhatsApp group that is secure and safe. We don't let people in unless they are verified staff members. We have close to 500 people. There are other groups as well that I'm connected to, whether it be on Facebook or other forms of social media, not officially part of United Jewish Teachers, but also people who get the updates from United Jewish Teachers as well. So we're probably more than 500 when you think about it, but I'm going to give a conservative number and say about 500.
Oh, so tell the audience a little bit about what you found in your report.
So I would say the four biggest takeaways was that when Mamdani took office in January, on his first day, he revoked the executive order of the IHRA definition. What we've noticed and identified is there was an uptick in incidents post January 1st because there was this feeling that you can criticize people who support Israel. I'll give you an example. There was a senior at Towson Harris High School in Queens, New York, one of the top high schools in the city. Student was graduating decision day, made an announcement that they were joining the IDF. They were bullied like crazy. When this was brought to school administrators and the superintendent, nothing was done. What the report shows is that there are students who are vilified in my own building, Mike, not my school, in my building. There was a sign posted in June that read out Nazi, Nazi, but not the Nazi you think of in Nazi Germany. No, accusing Israel of being a Nazi apartheid state. So this is what we're dealing with. Palestinian flags being waved at graduations despite rules being in place not to. So when you revoke the IHRA definite, I'm sorry.
IHRA, what does that stand for?
I'm sorry, the International Holocaust Remembrance Association's definition of anti-Semitism, which essentially says that there are forms of anti-Zionism that can be related to anti-Semitism. There's specific biases, specific targets to Israel more than any who support Israel. So the point is that those are protections in place to show that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That does not mean you can't criticize Netanyahu. He's a leader like any other leader. That does not mean you can't criticize the actions of the IDF. All things are fair play. You're allowed your freedom of speech. You're allowed to, criticize anyone. But when you're going above and beyond and you're targeting just one group of people and one nation, it is very clear it's a bias, not objective opinion.
So I guess you could relate the fact that Mamdani pledged and vowed to arrest Netanyahu and not any of the other terrorist leaders or questionable leaders that come to New York, that would be considered a singling out.
Yeah, I mean that to me right then and there is exactly that form. Listen, that's also, can we talk about genocide for a second? One of the issues with the fact that the IHRA definition would also include when you are targeting Israel, calling it a genocide, when you still don't have any proof that it's a genocide. The term genocide was created in relation to the Jewish people after the Holocaust was to make sure people knew when 6 million Jews, by the way, not just Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust.
Right.
We like to take a lot of the credit for the Holocaust. There were also 6 million people of others. Also, we forget about the fact that Stalin killed millions of people as well, so attributed to the Jewish people.
Absolutely.
This
How about Mao?
is, yeah, 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 what Mao did in China, 100%. I mean, millions and millions of Chinese people dead because of Mao. How about in China right now? With Uyghur Muslims who are dealing with putting in concentration
The
camps.
Uyghurs, sure.
The point, yeah. So when you're talking about what has happened in Gaza, it's terrible. It's war. Nobody likes war. I wish there wasn't a war. But guess what? Hamas has spent years building tunnels underneath their ground that they could have put their people in for bomb shelters, just like Israel does when Hamas was throwing bombs into Israel. But Hamas is not accused of genocide, even though they killed 1,200 people on October 7th, even though they were sending bombs into Israel for years post October 7th.
100%.
But Israel does it immediately. It's genocide.
100%.
So I want to get back to
Yes.
two other things in the report that are very important.
Yes.
The other thing in the report that's really important is that when school administrators were notified of swastikas and other hate speech, they would remove them without NYPD being called in. That's a big problem. We need NYPD to actually investigate.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, NYPD. We need NYPD to go in and investigate
But let me ask you
crimes
a question.
against Jewish people. Yeah.
What would the NYPD do? There are people who beat the crap out of people in the subway, and they're in and out of the system very quickly. What do you think the appetite would be for our DA in Manhattan, Bragg, or the judicial system in general? What do you think would happen to that kid who's 16, who's brought in for putting a swastika on a locker?
So I'm not interested in the arresting of kids. My purpose is the proper documentation. So when the city releases every month their hate crime, documents, their hate crime numbers, they don't include the schools in them because NYPD wasn't called in. I want to make sure we're giving people an accurate picture of how bad things are in the city. Because when the numbers keep going up, like we've seen over the last few months since Mamdani has been in office, we saw a Jewish man stabbed on the Jewish holiday of Tisha B'Av 2 days after the Netanyahu war criminal video came out. Those things are very, very important. So I want schools to document properly so that there is a ability to inform the public about these issues. NYPD can't include those numbers in their report if they're not called in.
Well, that's a question I have for you. There's a hierarchy from the teacher up to the DOE, up to McMahon, the Secretary of Education. Who's doing their job in that hierarchy?
Can I be honest with you?
Sure.
Nobody.
Like Linda McMahon pledged certain things, but rhetoric is cheap. Everybody spouts rhetoric, but from her on down, your principal, the DOE, the so how do
Mike,
don't want to.
I'm not politically aligned to anybody. My point is that I've heard wonderful things from Linda McMahon, Leah Terrell, and Harmy Dillon. Wonderful things. I haven't seen action. Words are nice. Words mean a lot, but action means more. I've seen
Action
nothing.
is everything.
What I've seen though is the lawsuits brought by the DOJ have been overturned in certain cases. Mahmoud Khalil, who sits on Twitter all day, still living in this country. The issue is that if Mahmoud Khalil actually committed a crime, why is he still here? And if he didn't commit a crime, why are you targeting him? We know what he did on college campuses. We know what he did at Columbia. He targeted Jewish students. He violated his visa. We know that. But the Trump DOJ can't do anything. That's a problem. If the lower courts are blocking you from doing that, then you're making it a spectacle. You're actually elevating Mahmoud Khalil to a higher status because now he looks like he's winning.
Well, I think
it's a problem.
I think that higher status was visibly elevated when he had dinner with the mayor.
Gracie Mansion. Yeah.
I mean, that's just that's just incredible. You're basically validating a guy who was harassing and leading. It's crazy. It's crazy. And you know what? Insanity is if he runs again, he'll be reelected. That's insanity.
And again, I'm not trying to be critical of Trump's DOE or Trump's DOJ. I get it. They're doing their best. But the reality is that we're suffering.
Right.
The Jewish people are suffering, and so
So
we're grasping onto anybody who's willing to help, and what we're seeing is the action's not there.
so who out there would you say is willing to help? Who out there with any power? I know Bill Ackman, who doesn't have any power other than financial, but he made a statement. He continues to make statements, but he doesn't have the power. Who has the power? Who's out there that you feel has power and is wielding it on this issue?
That's a great question. I'm going to go on. I'm going to talk about something I didn't expect to, but the Jewish legacy organizations get criticized often by a lot of people, and I myself have criticized them. They're under the
Jewish
same
name some.
JCRC, UJA,
Okay.
ADL.
Okay.
Okay, I like these people. I've spoken to them. I speak to them. I like them. I really do think their heart's in the right place. I think they're in a tough situation because they're trying to balance a political game with both parties. They typically Jews have been more Democrats, so they're still trying to
Okay.
keep their relationships with the Democratic Party. At the same time, I think they're also trying to find a balance where they don't want to seem extreme because they don't want to lose donors. They don't want to lose people. So I get it. They're in a tough space. I would say that they're not doing enough, and I don't mean to say that because I'm a critical person. I am a critical person, but I think I have the right to be. It's the beauty of living in this country is you have the right to criticize.
Of
But I also
course.
want to criticize with actual meaning. I think they mean well. They mean well. They're just not doing enough, and people are feeling it. And this is why there's a lot of criticism towards them.
What would
I wish they could do more. I wish they would do more.
what would you
But
do?
I want to. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, no. What would doing like the UJA? I would imagine that a decent amount of their donor base doesn't want them to do enough. It's probably a very liberal donor base that doesn't maybe recognize that there's an issue out there. If you're wealthy and living, you're not on the streets, it's a different ball game, I think. But, what would you like them to do? What would you like UJA to do?
So what I would like them to do is, look, they actually didn't show up to Mamdani's breakfast. Mamdani had a breakfast with like religious leaders and stuff, so they didn't show up. They did that on purpose, right?
I thought they weren't
I think they're
invited.
trying to find a balance, or they might have not been invited. I'm not sure if they weren't invited, or they didn't show. Either way, right? They weren't there. But I think that
Okay.
also sends a message. They if you notice, they have not been chummy with the Mamdani administration. What I'd like to see them do is they did this press conference after the stabbing, right? They had a whole press conference outside of the synagogue on the last month when the stabbing happened after the Netanyahu war criminal video. What I'd like to see them is elevate more people. Stop showing up with people like Letitia James, who again, not criticizing Letitia. I've actually spoken to Letitia James. I think she's very kind. I think she's very nice, but I think that she's very political. Bring people in who are not just from the same party. Julian Menon is great. Mark Levine is great. Julian Menon is the city council speaker. Mark Levine is the comptroller of New York City. They are great. They are Jewish advocates. I love them. I really do. I like them a lot.
Also, the
But
council member from Staten Island, Frank Marino.
right, I'm saying,
Frank
but
Marino.
bring people in from both sides. Make this inclusive. Also, it doesn't just have to be politicians. Elevate people because we need next generation of politicians. Don't just have the same people speak every single time. It's like you have Mark Traeger, Eric Goldstein, who's on his way out. Like, bring more people and elevate the next group. You ask what they should be doing. Find the next group of people, speakers, younger, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds. Get the next generation of speakers in. I'm 42 myself. You know what? I'm trying to fight the good fight, but I'm not that young anymore. I'll keep doing this until I die, but I'm still not young. Get the next generation in,
I mean,
elevate them. That would
if
be my
you're
suggestion.
interested, and I don't know if he'd be, I'll introduce you to Gabe Einhorn, who was the
Yeah,
gentleman we talked about who gave an internship to kid from Cornell, I think, or Columbia, who said, I don't want to work for a Jew. So, while he's a businessman, he's also very Jewish. So, we can talk about, elevating people and, better rhetoric out of UJA. The bottom line is that we have an issue, and it's not just it didn't start on October 7th. It's been around for,
No.
for hundreds, thousands of years. And, for Jews, other than the Holocaust, it runs a little bit undercurrent. October 7th brought it out into the world. And, I'll ask you, what can be done by rank? So I'm a Reform Jew. I'm not sure what you are, but it doesn't matter. But then you have the gamut up to Orthodox Jews. I'm still a Jew.
Sure.
Jews need to, Reform Jews or Orthodox. Yeah, I'm not walking around with a yarmulke, but I'm still a Jew. I'm still a target of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
What do people like me, what do people in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, we're a disparate religion. We run we run in different circles, but what can people do? Instead of, we've talked about the problem. Does a solution exist?
I would say last Friday night is a good example. The Centrally Synagogue, where Larry Montes, this guy, storms into a Reform synagogue and disrupts service, and and hurts a woman, assaults a woman.
Right.
Almost went after the rabbi, like how to be detained by NYPD and security. So you're right. Reform, conservative, Orthodox, I have to be in the Orthodox camp. We are all targets. We are all targets. I wanted to get back to one thing you asked earlier.
Absolutely.
Who are people who are stepping up? I want to highlight a few people that I think I'd be embarrassed if I didn't mention. Sid Rosenberg, who is the WABC radio host.
Love Sid.
I've been on Sid's show. Sid has mentioned me a couple of times. I love Sid Rosenberg. He is somebody who has stepped up and has done a lot. He's not a politician, but he's obviously very close to Bruce Blakeman, who's running for governor. He's very close to the president, Donald Trump. So Sid has been great. And Sid really,
he's got a bully pulpit.
Yeah,
but how can he use that bully pulpit better to he has guests like you on, but what can he do? Can he do more?
Well, I also want to highlight, I'm going to answer your question. I want to also highlight Councilwoman Ina Vernikov, who is a good friend, who I really believe is also a fighter out there. Vicky Palladino, who's not Jewish, but is always stepping up for the Jewish.
She's a pistol.
Yeah. But listen, each of them, could they do more? What I would say is they're very good at putting out the statement after. They're very good at talking about the issue.
Reaction, not proaction.
So what I would say is, for example, my report came out. Okay, I'm not putting this on anybody. They don't need to interview me. I don't need the publicity. WABC actually mentioned my report on their Instagram and their Facebook and their Twitter. Right? They put out a picture with that said the amount of incidents have happened. We got to keep talking about it. I want to see more politicians talk about this report, and I'll share this report. I actually sent it out to anybody and anyone who'd be willing to listen. I think we got to keep talking about it. They got to call on DOE. The city council has a task force to combat anti-Semitism. They're supposed to be bringing DOE in at some point. Do it sooner than later. Do not allow the DOE to get away with this. So I would call on the politicians and city council to step up more. I would say at the state level, we have Jewish Democrats and Jewish Republicans at the state level who can put pressure on the governor to do more. I'll give you an example. The governor has the opportunity to sign into to latch onto a federal program that would basically be a scholarship for people who send their children to private school. And so the governor is probably going to sign into this because it's a huge benefit, tax break, a tax exemption for many people who send their kids to private school. We need private schools to be protected with money so that people can send there, because the reality is, my report shows you, it's not safe for Jewish students to go to public school. We need to make Jewish private school more affordable, not because I don't want a mass exodus of public school. Listen, I'm a unionist. I believe in public school teaching. I am a public school teacher. I think there's a lot of good things about public school, and it's not affordable, and yeshiva and private school is not for everybody. But we are at a state right now where we're at ground zero right now. We've got to do whatever we can to make children safe. And sometimes the message gets sent to the chancellor and to the mayor if there is an exodus of Jews out of New York City schools.
Let me ask you this. You take
Yeah.
Jewish kids out of public school because they're not safe, and you put them in private school. That's not solving anything. That's just protecting
It,
the kids. It it's
yeah.
almost like we're running from the problem instead of going headfirst into the problem. And I'm not saying there's an easy solution because there certainly isn't. But I don't know. I don't know what the
No, I agree with you.
I don't know what the answer to it.
Listen,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. DOE in spring of 24, after they did their whole meeting the moment, they did a training with an organization called Facing History, which is a basically a social studies curriculum where they help support schools with curriculum and training and all that stuff. So they decided they were going to take on the Israel-Hamas war and teach people about it. So the DOE did an arrangement with Facing History to educate both superintendents and principals, and then one for teachers. I participated in this training. They sent one person per school to sort of go back and basically train their staff. Okay, ready for this? I went to the training. It was a whole day. Ask me how many times they brought up Israel Hamas.
Probably none. One.
One time at the very end of the training, where they gave a scenario where you have two students walking the hallway. One supports Hamas, or one supports Palestine, one supports Israel, and they're arguing and they walk into your class. Now, what do? They give us 5 minutes to talk at a table, and that was it.
So what was the bulk
So
of what was the bulk of the seminar about?
honestly, it was very political. It was about January 6th. It was about the insurrection, how to talk about the insurrection.
So if
Can
the
you imagine that?
so here's my frustration and my sadness, as I described to you before we started. I look at the generation coming up, and I wonder what's going to be when you have the seminar you went to, when you have unfettered demonstrations walking down 42nd Street, when you have Hassan Piker and Khalil leading whatever it is they want, when you have politicians in Congress, and I'm sure in the state capitol, and certainly on the city council, what the hell do we do? And I
Yeah.
wanted to talk to you today because you're on this subject, and I'm kind of I'm at a loss of you look at the 30s in Germany, and Jews accepted the first issues because they're like, it can't get any worse, we'll take it. And then it got
Right.
worse, and then it got worse, and then ultimately it became the Holocaust. So I find it troubling that Jews typically, and I'm generalizing, of course, because that's what I do, seem immune to the subject, seem oblivious to the subject, other than, we had an issue at Syosset High School where a kid drew a swastika, and then they went to his home and he had bomb making material. So, where are we going?
I mean, I think we saw yesterday with an ISIS-inspired plot to
Yeah,
kill
the
people at the
Capitol.
Capitol. Listen. The reality is, and this is why my report's so important, is the report mentions that there needs to be retraining of educators because they, first of all, to identify what anti-Semitism is, we have to define it, which we mentioned earlier. But more importantly, so that we're not indoctrinating students. When you're in a school of students who are indoctrinated to hate the state of Israel or hate Jews, and now you're surrounding yourself, whether being a teacher or a student, around those same people, you're not safe. So I think the most important thing is that schools have to figure out who is doing the trainings. I want to give you an example because I think it's really important. CAIR New York, CAIR. So
CAIR.
yeah, that's the Council of Islamic Relations.
Right.
They are a very problematic group. Now, there's CAIR National, which we're not going to get into. We could probably spend days on that. But CAIR New York gave a training in a school in February. A school in Queens gave a training to teachers and to students. Now, you tell me this. Why are they doing trainings? This is the same CAIR that on their Instagram had a video that said, "From the river to the sea, Palestine should be free." We know that's elimination language. They want to eliminate Jews.
So
Why is this organization?
what was the premise and topic of their discussion?
You're going to find this so ironic. Preventing hate crimes.
Right. People
So an
tend,
org so an organization that essentially promotes the killing of Jews on their Instagram is the ones that are now at tasked with solving the problem of hate crimes. We have a problem. We have a big problem there.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, Moshe, this was great. I mean, the topic sucked.
I appreciate you.
The conversation was great, and as issues come up and go on, I would love to have you back on at some point to talk a little bit more about what's happening and you know, what it is that we, the people, can do.
Mike, I just want to say one thing before I go.
Absolutely.
It is worth this work knowing there are people like you who are willing to talk about it.
Listen, it's you know, the name of this podcast is "Do You Ever Wonder?" And when it comes to this subject, I wonder about a hell of a lot of things. So,
But as long as there are people like you who are willing to platform this issue, I think the world is in a better place.
well, thank you for everything that you do. And again, I'd love to have you on at another time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Hmm. My outro doesn't seem to be working. Hold on. Hmm. All right. So, you know what? We're going to skip the outro today, Moshe. I thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. And when you publish your work, let me know and I'll promote it.
Appreciate that.
All
Thank
right,
you.
my friend. Thank you.